Hello to my Cobbs Can clan. It's a new year, it's a new start, and I've got a new saddle, I've got a new camera, there's a lot of stuff to catch you up on. So without further ado, let's roll that intro and get into the video. So I am actually in a rush. I need to set off because I've got the lovely Bodyworks by Alice coming. She's gonna come and have a look at Peps. There's been a lot of stuff going on with her health-wise, with Peps, sorry, not with Alice. Hopefully Alice is fine. And yeah, I want to get her checked over, but I'll talk more about that in a bit. I'm in a hurry and I do need to get to the stables. So let's go, let's put the foot down. No, I'm joking. No speeding, guys. No speeding. Yeah, let's go. Let's get to the stables and go see Peps because you haven't seen her in ages.
Hello. Good morning.
Oh, and hello. Hello. I'm not edible. I'm sorry. It's like, give me something edible. Where's Alice? Alice come to see you. She has. So this is Alice.
Hello.
Alice has been to see Peps before, but the last time you were here, I was trying to film and I had Hazel with me and it was absolute chaos.
No, don't do that. He's taking over the vlog.
So we gave up. We were like, next time we'll do it, and Hazel will be at nursery. So do you want to explain a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I am a Masterson method practitioner, which is a form of body work that looks at where the body's holding tension, and it works very closely with the nervous system as well. So basically the whole goal is to identify areas of tension using lots of different techniques to help release that, and that basically improves performance, reduces risk of injury, and it complements lots of other things as well, so other forms of physio or just other things that people like doing with their horses. And I also do fascia and trauma release. So that's looking more in depth at the fascia, which is sort of like a sleeve around all the key areas of the body, and also how the fascia affects the way of moving, and whether there's certain things that are restricting because of the fascia. So working with both of those together and sort of creating my own little technique, really. So what I'm doing with Peps now is I'm just feeling the key areas of her body that I find most affect performance, so range of motion, and just feeling how it's all feeling. So every horse is going to feel slightly different, depending on breed, age, what they're doing, what kind of work that they're in. But there is sort of like a normal feel for the muscles, how they should be feeling. Certain areas, if there's reactivity or spasm, then I know that there's a lot of tension in those areas, and then we can work to sort them out. So kind of just have a little feel around and feel how it feels, and then I like to compare left and right side as well, because you'll often find on one side it'll be a lot easier, the other side you'll find a lot more reactivity and vice versa. So just have a good little poke and prod around and see what we find to start with.
You have such a calming effect because you've literally gone in there and she's just like, and just chilled right out. I can't really remember what we found last time, can you? Because I was trying to take it in, I was also running around after a toddler.
Yeah, so we had some hind end restriction, a little bit of stiffness sort of through SI, and then there was a little bit kind of residual because you'd been having some saddle fit issues.
Yeah.
So it was sort of around kind of thoracolumbar junction where the back of the saddle would sit, there was a little bit of restriction, and then a little bit through the neck as well. So we were just working on mobilising that, some around the pole and jaw too. So it's kind of that front end area, but a lot of that can come as a result of if there's been restriction in the back and in the hind end. What then happens is they overload the front end because obviously they're not being able to work through from behind properly. So that is really common.
Yeah, I haven't actually told the vlog yet. I haven't vlogged in a while. I haven't told people about the saddle fit issue yet. So the saddle that I had fitted, it was around about just over 18 months ago now. It was restricting her shoulder. It was too long in the back, which explains the soreness on the SI and the lumbar, and also why she couldn't physically use her back end. It also threw my weight to the back and sat me in a bit of a chair position. So she's been loading, you know, all my weight's been loaded in the wrong place. But we have since got a new saddle, and she's been going really nicely in it, so it'll be interesting to see what you find this time round.
Well, the nice part is already all down this side. There's a little bit of tension, which I would say is normal anyway, but there's no muscle reactivity, there's no spasm, so in general she's feeling quite nice. Definitely some work to kind of release round abdomen, groin, and coming through lumbar psoas area, but I'd say again that's very normal. 90% of horses that I go in and work with, that is quite common anyway. I do a lot of work kind of focusing on the underneath of the horse as well, sort of going from hyoid down through the pectorals and the chest.
Well, she was also like just recovering from the ulcers when you last came, so that
yeah.
So it would make sense that she's got, you know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So we're not just treating current things. The fascia and the body holds a memory.
Yeah.
So even when these issues have been resolved, yes, there'll be an improvement because it's not getting worse, but the fascia often stays how it was when that trauma was there, whether it's a physical trauma, whether it's something like ulcers, whether it's a fight or flight response. So just by kind of working with that fascia and starting to release it, we can kind of reprogram the body not to hold itself.
And that was the same for me. So my physio also does fascia release. And I was having, like, it got to a point where I was so sore that I physically couldn't, like, get up and do anything. So if I was feeling that way, then she must have been pretty similar, you know? And I had to have 2 sessions in quite quick succession to sort myself out.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to get yourselves checked as well, guys, and not just the horses.
And that's the thing, and particularly with something like the fascia that responds to emotional tension as well as physical tension, the horses will pick up on our own tensions too. So you know that saying of if you're nervous in the saddle, the horse won't know why you're nervous, but they'll pick up on it. And it's a similar thing. So if we can kind of get ourselves right and get them right.
She's like, can you give me a scratch, please? But I haven't had any back pain since I've changed the saddle.
Amazing.
So that says a lot.
And again, that's probably because she's travelling so much nicer underneath you. You're not having to adapt your body and your position.
I mean, I haven't ridden that much, but it would be like I'd have my treatment with my physio and then have one ride and my back would be sore again. So.
Bless you. And then that gets demotivating as well, doesn't it? Because then you think, oh, if I'm going to ride, I'm going to get a sore back.
Yeah, exactly. There have been a lot of things demotivating the pair of us over the last, like, year and a half. Hopefully we'll get back into it this year. Hey? She's like, what are you doing back there? Sus. Be interesting to see what you pick up on this side, because usually her physio would pick up on the right hand to left for soreness.
Yeah. So I was just about to say, so this side definitely coming through over the top, through the lumbar area and into the glutes, there's a little bit more tightness.
Yeah.
There's still nice movement through the SI. You can see when I'm asking for that rotation, she's lifting nicely, and there is a little bit of lift through there, but I'd like that to feel a little bit easier. And then just coming through lumbar area here. just want that to kind of roll a little bit more and just get a little bit more mobility through there. But saying that, there's no reactivity. She's not like against the pressure, so it's not, I wouldn't say it's something that's current. It's just probably the way, like you say, it's her tension pattern, which all horses have. Good girl. So there's definitely stuff we can do to help with that. Good girl. And then again, coming in to groin here. I'll let you have a little feel actually if you want to.
Okay.
Just so you can feel the difference before I've done something. Of what I'm going to be working on, sort of compare left to right.
Okay.
So
where do you
if you just want to get your hand on the saddle and then just gently slide round and come up into that space just with a flat palm. And just have a little feel. Can you feel how it feels quite firm?
Yeah.
And then under your hand it's quite grainy.
Yeah.
And quite tight. So that's fascial restriction.
Okay.
So basically the fascia, when it's restricted, it only will allow the muscles to expand and contract to how much space
so
the
much,
fascia
yeah.
has.
Okay.
So just popping around to this side.
Boo.
If you have a little feel, exactly the same on this side. Can you feel the difference? So can you feel on this side you've got a lot more play?
Yeah, that side feels grainier. Yeah. Okay.
So there is still stuff on this side. It's not that one side's completely smooth and the other side's not. But in terms of just movability and being able to move this area around, you've got a lot more space on this side, which means more range of motion, more freedom compared to the other side that's slightly more restricted. You've got more of a pull to the inside, which is going to make it harder for her to pick up and come through.
Okay.
So a lot of that we can work on. A lot of it will be coming from the tongue and from the neck, and then coming down into the abdomen.
Wow.
So the main thing I'm going to work on with her, even though we've got that stuff behind, and a lot of this will be breed type as well.
Yeah.
But naturally she has quite an upright posture.
Yeah.
So she wants to hold herself quite high, her head's quite high, and that's her at rest.
Yeah.
But what that does is it uses it builds up a lot of tension into the base of her neck here. So you can see these muscles here. It all kind of comes to a point here, and you can see the space behind her head is quite closed.
Yeah.
So what we're looking to work on is just opening up this junction here and releasing this tension in the TMJ and in the jaw to release the tension that's in here, which will then give the top of her neck a lot more mobility. And then also
So I'll stretch around
doing
for
the same
you.
thing of just releasing some tension through the neck here. What that will do is give the scapula and the shoulder a lot more movement. So if we can open up her front end, allow the shoulder to move more forward and more freely, that will open up the chest, and then that means that she can then travel through her body a lot easier. So when they naturally are holding themselves a little bit more backwards, imagine it'd be like you trying to run or walk or just go about your daily life in this sort of a frame. So you're going to fatigue quite quickly, you're going to build up tension through your back, you're then going to drop away from that, and that's going to build up pressure in this area here.
Yeah.
So if we can do this, then what we're going to do is just then allow her to open up through her tummy and step through from underneath.
She's like, just scratch me. Give me a stop talking and get on with it.
She's like, I know what you're going to do, so
But get on with it, yeah.
Because again, when we've got tension in this area here, the scapula sort of wants to sit a little bit further back, which puts a little bit more pressure here. But then when you think about where the saddle sits, that's exactly where then our weight's going to be in a pressure point. So if they're then dropping away from that, you can imagine they're avoiding that pressure that then builds up the pressure here. So by kind of undoing all of that, but I'll stop talking and start doing it. Hopefully that will make sense.
Yeah, definitely. But she physically hasn't been able to do that because of the saddle.
Yeah, exactly.
I was watching an interesting video on YouTube, actually. I'll have to link it down below for the viewers. But it was something like 24 signs of lameness.
Okay.
And it was, I think, like a vet who's also a saddle fit, I don't know. But she was talking about, you know, these different signs of lameness, and that most of the time, if a horse is displaying any of those 24 signs, it's either a saddle fit issue or it's something else going on within the body.
Interesting.
And it was it was really interesting to watch, and that was kind of a bit of a light bulb moment for me, where I was like, oh, maybe I should get a second opinion on the saddle. And she took one look at the saddle and just went, I don't like it. And I was like, oh God. But yeah, then when she started explaining things to me, it was like, God, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I was maybe a little bit ignorant, because you put your faith in these professionals to fit a saddle, you know, because I'd gone somewhere to have it fitted, or maybe it just wasn't fitted to me specifically, and
It's
just
so
fitted to her.
hard,
It is hard. Like, you do put your faith in people, and I would, you know, defend myself by saying, no, she has had it done professionally. She's trying to avoid doing the release, isn't she? But yeah, sometimes it doesn't hurt to get a second opinion.
Absolutely, and especially if there's anything you're not sure about, or even just for peace of mind.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is you know your horse better than anyone, and if you feel like something's not quite right, then trust your gut.
What's that about? You're not pleased about this?
Yeah. So we're just starting sort of around the base of the neck and into the pectorals. Just doing some gentle fascia release just to start to open up the thoracic slope.
Okay. So I actually had the vet out in December because she was sitting on that water drinker over there.
Okay.
And like relieving the pressure from behind. She was also not willing to stretch her right hind down when the physio was here. And she trotted up sound. So they were like, we can't really do any you know, any nerve blocks or anything because she's come up sound.
Yeah.
And they basically just said, get the new saddle and bring her back into work slowly and just see how she goes. And so far she seems to be okay, and I haven't really seen her displaying those same things for a little while now.
Going back to muscle or fascial restriction, it's often something that isn't necessarily picked up in a veterinary term because, like you say, there isn't a lameness there. But what it can do is if there's restriction higher up in the limb, or like you say, from another restriction, whether it's kind of human influence or saddle influence or anything like that, it can create a block down the limb and add more concussive force through the limb. So then over time, obviously, if that was left undiagnosed or the things weren't changed, that can then cause like a lower limb injury or a suspensory problem or anything like that, because you're taking away that suspension from the top of the limb. Your muscles and your fascia higher up the body.
See, we were, like me and Helen were concerned that it was suspensory.
Yeah.
But perhaps, maybe we've caught it early, and whatever was causing that, like the tension there on the suspensory has been released slightly. This is what when she's like not sure about something, she puts herself in a corner. Like the dentist came out recently as well, and she concertinas herself so much. You'd think for such a big girl, like how do you get yourself in such a ball in the corner? It's quite funny.
I often find as well with when you're working with the nervous system and you're looking for that release, obviously you're working with the horse's fight or flight and their natural brace response. So their natural instinct for anything, because they're a prey animal, if there's anything that's challenging them or anything that they're afraid of, or not even afraid of, but anything that's challenging them, their natural response is either to fight it or run away from it. Yeah. And if they can't do that or they don't want to do that, they'll internalise and they'll brace. Yeah. And this technique tries to stay below that brace response. So just as they're about to start to release, you kind of see them go through a little bit of a pattern, and often they get a bit fidgety or they start kind of shifting or moving, and then you find that then they start to release. So it is funny, but each horse you kind of see develop a little pattern. Yeah. Oh. But you can already see how her head and neck position is starting to change. Yeah, she's like, I'll try and show the vlog actually. Like we've got more space here, haven't we? She's like, you're a wizard. You're a wizard, Harry. Just gently starting to open up the chest. And then once I feel the tissues are starting to soften in my hand, I start asking for movement and range of movement. So just using her wither just to start to rock her. I'm trying to show the vlog, but Peps is like, I'm the star of the show. I don't know if you'll see that she's just starting very to gently. Yeah, let me have a, I'll step as far back as I can. She's like, I'll come closer. Yeah, you can see that on the video. And that's really nice movement, because what I'm looking for is as the rib cage is moving, it's moving between her legs. She's not kind of tensing through each leg, rocking her weight from one leg to the other leg. She's actually just distributing the weight through her rib cage, which is just an indication of nice mobility and nice release. There's another nice release there. Nice one, Peps. And the licking and chewing. Oh, you would stop doing it now that I'm filming, you know. But even all the, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but the little tremoring. What, on her lip? Oh yeah. I'll try and zoom in so I'm not getting too... So that's all fascial tremoring.
like, do this bit. We're not gonna see. She wants to yawn. It's interesting, isn't it?
And just now that we've sort of started to open up the chest and the base of the neck, we can add in more range of motion from the neck and start to get a little bit more lateral movement.
Do you always start like from the front and work your way back, or?
No, it depends on the horses. I used to always start at the front. Depending on the horses and what I'm finding, quite often now I'll start at the back.
Okay.
But it just depends on the horses. Whatever I feel like is their sort of key area, I kind of start to work there and make my way.
I suppose because of her breed type, she's like front loading, isn't she?
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. And that's just sort of where more of her tension's sitting.
Yeah.
And also it'd be interesting to feel once she releases this tension from the front end, I think how her back end feeling is going to feel a lot different.
Yeah. You look quite shiny, Peps.
She looks very shiny.
I didn't do the best clip job of you this time, though. I'm sorry, Lister. Please keep sponsoring me. I did clip in the dark, in my defence. Clipping a dark bay horse in the dark is quite tricky.
I always think as well, you know, when you're clipping, I think I go like blind because I like look at it and I'm like, oh, that's a great job. And then I look the next day and I'm like, how have I missed 50% of the horse? So the other thing that I'm starting to work with is just over the top of her neck.
Okay.
We've got the nuchal ligament. So that starts up at the pole and it comes all the way down and it runs along the spine and it finishes at the SI. And it's the ligament that, you know, when dressage horses are really overbent or anything like that, that's the ligament that's really getting kind of pulled around. But even when horses have a slightly more upward posture like she naturally does, the nuchal ligament is slightly restricted and slightly contracted. And I can feel for her, it's slightly pulled at the top of her neck over to the right.
Okay.
So that would mean she'd find it a lot easier to bend and flex right.
To the right, yeah.
And to come left, she'd probably feel a little bit heavier, a little bit more restricted in your hand.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is just gently, and again, it's just really simple working with the nervous system, just getting a little bit of mobility back there. And every horse will have a favoured side. It's very rare that I'll feel a horse and it feels very centred. I'd say it's a little bit like us being sort of right or left-handed.
Yeah.
But if we can mobilise it, because often what happens is it gets stuck on the side that they prefer. And if we can just get it mobile, a lot of the time people might feel it on their horses if they're doing something with their mane and the horse pops its head down and they feel a clunk or like a rocky. You can sometimes even see it with the muscle. And as it's clunking over, if we can just get that ligament nice and mobile so that it will happily go either way, again, that makes kind of for them a lot easier as well. And also, once that ligament's mobile, it allows that connection from back to front to be a lot easier as well and a lot more connected. When there's restriction in that ligament, again, it creates sort of like a tension in the
I think last time you came, I remember she was drooling, wasn't she?
She was, yeah. I can't remember what we were doing at that point. But it's nice with all of this stuff that we're working on with her. She's very happy to let go.
Yeah.
There's nothing that she's really resisting, and a lot of that to me indicates that it's quite old stuff, or it's stuff that she's kind of had for a long time, but it's not bothering her as such. It's just sort of who she is as a person.
I had the like a horse whisperer come to look at her, and she said she's an internal warrior, so that would make sense.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't outwardly express. That's why when the ulcers were here, I knew something was seriously wrong, because she was outwardly expressing pain.
So you can see, even on this side, her pattern compared to the left, her pattern on this side, because she finds it much easier to flex and bend on this side, is almost to overdo that in order not to release.
Yeah.
So she feels a little bit of restriction, and her default is to curl this side of her neck up.
That also makes sense to me, because my left leg is weaker, so I feel like I neglect my outside left leg when I need to use it, if that makes sense. So she probably does fall onto the left shoulder on the right rein. I'm exposing myself, guys.
It's good though. I think it's so nice for people to be able to hear things like that and also see something like this, because it might click for them and go, oh, that's what I'm feeling, or that's what I'm doing.
Connect the dots.
And again, now that she's started to release, I'm just asking for that little bit of range of motion.
Yeah. You can see how quickly she came round to you on that rein. That side. You know what I mean. So you were saying that some of the tension would come from the tongue. I suppose that's quite a large organ, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's a big, strong muscle, and the attachment of the tongue to the jaw is the hyoid bone. So it's a little bone that looks like this, and it sits centrally underneath here, so in between the jaw. And there's a big muscle that goes from the hyoid down the neck and into the sternum, called the sternohyoid. And that muscle, if there's restriction and tightness in the tongue, that muscle is contracted, which then blocks the movement of the shoulder, and it creates tension sort of through the base of the neck, and again creates this sort of a response. There's also a big fascial sleeve that attaches from the hyoid, comes down through the pectorals, under the belly, and attaches back at the abdomen. So again, if you've got a pull, and the fascia works, it's almost like a continuous sleeve. So like my leggings, for example, if there's restriction up here at the tongue and this is the belly, if I start pulling up, you can see the effect that it would have all the way through. So if we can mobilise and release this,
she's like, have you got treats in there?
then it'll kind of free up the whole body. So often we're quite guilty of looking at things individually, which is important because we need to know what everything feels like on its own, but equally what impact does that have elsewhere in the body as well. So this is now working TMJ and jaw, and again sort of helping with that mobilisation of this definitely looks different.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
It's a lot softer. And again, it's interesting because this area is where they hold emotional tension,
okay.
like us. So if they're kind of feeling anything else anywhere in the body, it reflects in this area. So often it's quite a good indication if your horse is kind of tense or tight in the pull and the jaw.
That they're unhappy about something,
yeah. There's something that's not quite kind of going on. Sometimes it can literally just be an issue in that area. But often a lot of horses who, before the bodywork session, they'll be head shy, they won't want their ears touched. A lot of the time it's just as simple as kind of removing that tension. So what I'm liking at the moment is how, when she started, she was doing quite small, choppy movements. Although she had nice mobility from the start, she's actually got quite good jaw movement. But what I'm liking now is the time that she's taking with her mouth open. So she's really exploring the movement of that lower jaw. Her tongue's coming out. She's really not rushing the process. Good girl, and you can see a little bit that she's happily going left and right as well, just of her own accord. So she's swinging her lower jaw out to the right and swinging her lower jaw out to the left. Some horses will just prefer one way, in which case I'll spend a little bit of time just freeing up the other side for them. But with her it's quite nice, you can see she's
quite happy both ways.
Quite happy both ways, which is brilliant. A nice movement in this joint here, which is your TMJ, your temporomandibular joint. And that's the area that, like in us, if we're stressed, we clench our teeth. It's this area here.
Okay.
So it's the attachment of the lower jaw to the skull. And horses are like us, they get tension headaches. And when you think about a stressed person, when you think about someone that's constantly clenching their teeth and everything like that, and they're tight in the jaw, their shoulders are raised. So it's a similar thing for the horses. That whole area gets tight, and then you get restriction through the neck, everything like that. So a lot of the things we can kind of compare and think, oh, actually, yeah, that's what it must feel like. So she did a lot of this already herself when I was mobilising the jaw. But what I tend to look for is, normally when we start with the hyoid release, the tongue's quite contracted and quite high up in the mouth, and I look for this lengthening and this release. And she's doing all of that movement. And
really?
This is obviously nothing that I would advise anyone to try at home.
No.
So don't go and start pulling your horse's tongue around, because there are very delicate attachments to the back of the head and to the hyoid bones. It's very gentle, delicate attachments.
Are there any things that people could do at home?
Yeah, that's something we can definitely go through at the end.
Sure.
But this is basically just really mobilising that area and also helping with all of these muscles.
That is so much more open than when you started, like so
fab,
much
isn't
more.
it? And even just the tone of the muscles, you can see she's much more kind of the typical shape that we want, the softness in the base of the shoulder and the neck.
Yeah.
And just the openness in this throat lash as well. Have a little think about that. And that's it, the other thing when working with the nervous system, every now and again, just stepping away and giving that nervous system time to process, giving her time to feel the change in her body.
She's like, oh, what else are you going to do? That was interesting. She always like points to just behind here. I don't know why. I don't know if there's anything that you'd find there, but whether she just wants a scratch there or something, I don't know. But like literally, that's always where she'll turn her head to.
Funny.
I feel like she's trying to tell me something, but I don't understand. I really do try to listen. I do. I don't have to worry about storage this time either, because I've got a big fat new memory card.
I forgot that was last time, wasn't it? We were.
Oh yeah, it was absolute chaos. I'm trying to watch Hazel. My phone's running out of stuff. Oh, it was just a nightmare. Always the unprofessional on this channel, guys.
Keeping it real.
Keeping it real, yeah. I think where she's quite short in the neck as well, that also contributes to that tightness.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all the things to consider as well, you know. It's looking at natural conformation, it's looking at breed, it's looking at temperament even. Look at more nervous horses, more flighty horses compared to more relaxed horses.
Oh, you are pretty, Peps. When you do choose to put your ears forward.
So I'm just working on now a little bit of pole release and just opening that junction that connects the skull to the neck. When you look at particularly like a carb or a more native breed, the size of their head and the weight of their head is going to be quite a lot.
Yeah.
And when you think about that in relation to the size of that vertebra and the size of the neck that it's on, and then the angle of the head and the neck as well, and unlike us, they don't have a pillow that they rest their head on every day. Often some of them will kind of lie flat out and put their head down, but other than that, they're carrying that weight around 100% of the time. So this joint, even before we get involved and ride or anything like that, will have some tension in it. So if we can kind of just help them release that by taking the weight and opening up that joint, again, that has good repercussions through the rest of the body as well.
Well, I might have lots of SD card space, but my battery's slowly going down.
No.
It's alright, we're fine. This is fine, it's all okay, guys. Don't panic. just showing how
yeah,
much
just
softer
coming down
this
after
is.
we've done that pole work, you can see how everything's just gliding a lot more.
Is that better?
Yeah.
We've got lots of clicking going on, Peps. You're an old bird now. Like last year I started noticing a few little grey hairs popping up and I'm like, oh no, don't start with that.
Paint over them. So again, something I find really common with a lot of horses is just picking up the leg, the tension pull of the leg. So naturally she wants to be quite closed in through the pectoral and have her leg in like this. To come out and open, it's a lot tighter, which is normal.
Yeah.
But what we just want to encourage is a more neutral position,
Okay.
so that she's naturally happy to come in or out and she doesn't really favour one or the other. You can see how as she releases her shoulder, the movement that comes all the way through the chest, through the back and all the way up. Okay, I'm just going to bring her leg forward. Oh, you heard me!
It's like, can do.
Yeah. And what she's wanting to do now is just push all of her weight down through the leg. Okay, put it down. Because what I'm not looking for is I'm not looking for her to stretch.
Yeah.
I'm looking for her to release, which in terms of the nervous system is much harder to do.
Okay.
Because it's a full stretch, a lot of people bring their leg out and stretch it out before riding. But if the area is already tight, what they're doing is just keeping that leg in tension.
Yeah.
And actually then if the leg's already tight and we've just come out and stretched it, it's going to be almost the opposite effect when we put it back down. So instead, if we can kind of bring the leg forward to about 90 degrees, yeah.
You can see she's finding that hard.
Yeah. And then just help her to relax into that.
Good girl.
Good girl.
She's like, no thank you. I reckon the left might be even worse than that. Yeah, even there she's offering the stretch forward, like, no, that's easier.
But this is nice because now we're getting the release. So the leg's coming down, but there's no weight through the leg, which is perfect.
Oh.
Good girl. Good girl. So that's a complete release of the scapula and the shoulder. So then when we're asking for movement through it, you can see.
Wow.
Good girl.
She's like, that is not my favourite thing. Do not like that.
But that's really good. Good girl.
Yeah, I know you want to go out.
Interestingly,
It's softer.
it's much easier this side, which kind of makes sense in terms of if she's struggling to flex more to the left and bending more to the left, she'll be a lot stronger and using her right a lot more. So she'll be loading more onto that right side, which is making it tighter. But can you see how much easier and how much more movement, whereas on the right she was a little bit more pulled in.
And she's not fighting it on
No.
this side.
But I think you'll probably find her tension on this left side is coming from higher up, so it's more kind of from poll and upper neck.
And look how much more relaxed forward and her head and neck is now.
So I don't know if it'll pick it up on camera, but the area I'm sort of looking to release is point of shoulder.
Yeah. Oh wow.
That drop as it comes down. And then you should hopefully see the nice movement of the scapula there when it's released. Good girl. Yeah, good girl.
Loosey goosey.
Yeah. Right, onto the bottom.
She's like, where? She must be a bit looser than last time, because last time you were getting a lot of tremors on the front end when you were releasing the front.
No, definitely. Like I say, all the little areas that I'm finding, I would say are typical tension spots for a horse in work.
Yeah.
So it's not, every horse is going to have some tension. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it's
good
not
to have
natural for them
positive
to.
tension as well. You need, if you weren't tense at all, we'd be puddles on the floor. So it's everything that we're picking up, I would say, is normal and all kind of making sense in terms of all the bits of information we have about her. What I'm working on with her, even though I'm working on the top, what I'm actually working on is releasing her psoas, which is her deep core muscle. I'm working in this area around here, which allows for rotation and movement of the pelvis and also helps free up lumbar. Okay, so hopefully she's just about to release. Good girl.
You're having a bit of an MOT, Peps. She's at the dentist.
It's a good time of year to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, and then the farrier's coming on the 31st, so it's kind of your MOT month.
So there you can see she's now resting this hind end, so that's a nice release of that core.
So that was something else she was doing when she was sitting on her water drinker. I often would catch her resting always the right hind.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, like I said, I haven't really seen her doing either of those things in the last couple of weeks, so...
It might have just been, like you said, build up attention, that she was then finding a way to alleviate that.
Yeah.
And since you've resolved the other things, it's taken away that pressure off that specific area. Because again, if she was constantly resting the right hind, because her left hind is the more restricted side, her right hind again is going to be the one that's loading a lot more and, you know, using a lot more. And a similar thing to what I was doing when we were working at the front with the thoracic sling and the chest. As I'm starting to feel the fascia and everything start to soften and start to mobilise, starting to add in a little bit of lateral movement, just to see how everything's responding with each other, whether there's any sort of restriction anywhere or there's a part of the body that's holding and not letting go. So that's kind of why she's starting to look like she's rocking a little bit.
I wonder if it'll do it again. Her ears just went like down sideways. I've never seen her do that before.
So this is on her tighter side.
Okay.
Again, just releasing that deep core muscle, that psoas, and allowing pelvis to rotate forward. So often you'll find, and you can see she's having quite a deep response to it. And where she's had, trauma sounds like a really intense word, but something like a poor saddle fit is a repetitive trauma in the same area. And where you think about where that saddle's sitting, it's kind of blocking the movement of the pelvis. So even if you have a really healthy functioning pelvis, if there's something that's limiting that movement, what happens is the pelvis gets stuck backwards. So then all that power and all that force is just going straight down the limb. So you're getting concussive force through the limb, and then your pelvis, rather than rotating and rolling and flowing nicely forward, it gets stuck in a point, and then your core muscle gets really tight. So what I'm just working on with her here is just releasing that and just allowing that to come forward, so that then we can get that nice rotation through again. And then what that does is it then allows the hind end to connect to the front end.
That would actually make sense as to why she was trying to take the weight off the back end, because they're like stuck in that.
And like you say, all the power is getting contained in this hind end, because there's no connection, there's no free-flowing movement from the hind end to the front end.
She's like, well, I'm not sure about this now.
A lot of the time when these areas are tight, because they kind of display in tight lumbar and this area gets super tight, this is the area that we really want to focus on, because this is the obvious restriction, and it's important, we have to release that. But the other really important thing to do is release the core and release the tummy, because if we're trying to build up a back muscle, we need the core to be open and loose. If the core's too tight, all we're doing when we're trying to strengthen back muscle and strengthen core is making that core tighter and tighter, and then that creates, again, when you think about the fascia being a sleeve, it creates a pull down, and then that creates that sort of an action. So it's just not taking the opposite view to what we already do, but just thinking about the underside of the horse, because a lot of the time all we think about is this top half, and actually there's so much going on underneath that if we can mobilise the underneath, often the issues that we're having on top will either resolve easier or sometimes not not be there. Good girl.
Hello. That just reminded me of that. Hello, Jackie. That TikTok sound.
Wilson. So what I'm just looking at is now that both are released, we're getting that really nice buttery feel through all of these muscles and a nice springing action when I'm testing here. So at the start we did have some of that movement, but it wasn't quite as fluid and quite as easy as once it's been released. And then that will travel through all the way through the gluteals, because now everything can again glide and flow and work with each other. And then the same on the other side. So this side was hair tied to side, and actually if anything I'd say
it's a bit looser.
That's even better, so that's a really good thing.
Yes, hello.
Good girl.
You can see the whole of hers wiggling, like all the way down to her head.
So this is a nice one I like to finish on, because it really gives a nice indication of how loose everything is through the body. So it's a nice thoracic wiggle, so it's working on the whole spine. But as you can see, when everything's nice and loose and it's moving, it should go all the way down to the tip.
It looks funny, doesn't it?
You just need some little 70s music, actually.
Or that wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And this is why we're friends. She's like, thank you very much. She's so soft.
She's lovely, isn't she?
She's even softer now.
Okay, so Peps is just going to help me show you 3 little exercises that are going to help with the key areas. So the head, the shoulder and then the bum, that you can try before riding just to help your horses release tension. I've also got a series with 3 exercises for each place on my Instagram page. So if you wanted to have a look at that, that goes into them a little bit more in depth.
And then there's more on the Masterson's page, isn't there?
As well, there's a really good set of exercises on the YouTube page for the Masterson method. So just search Jim Masterson or the Masterson method, and they've got lots of different exercises as well. And they've got a really good book as well, and DVD that you could follow through if you're interested in doing anything like this.
I'll leave some links in the description for you all.
But basically, one really easy exercise is working on this area that we said with Peps at the start. Is just going to help open up this junction. So particularly if you find your horse is difficult to bend or flex, or is quite kind of tense in the head, what you're going to do is just get your fingertips and just come in at the bottom of the jaw, just in this space here. I'm going to hold the halter with one hand, and I'm just going to start with my fingertips and just gently sink into that spot. Now you can see with Peps, because she's just had her session, how easy it is for me to get in there and how nice and loose it is. This is the goal.
Yeah.
So kind of almost wherever we go, up the jaw, you can see how nice and open that is. If your horse isn't like that straight away, don't worry. If you can only get here to start with, that's all you're going to do. You're going to just gently come in as far as you can, and then just using very, very soft pressure, you're just gently going to press on the inside of the jaw, and just with your other hand hold the head straight. And I'm just going to wait there, and there you go. And you can see there's a release. So even though she's nice and loose and supple in there now, you can still see that just coming into these little areas, she's still going to get a release. So you're just gently going to work your way up, and as you get higher up, you're not going to come in and behind anymore. You're just going to lay your hand flat and just gently glide up. And what I'm looking at when I'm going is looking at her eye for any big blinks there. And you can see that's an area, and any kind of heavy big blinking is an area where they're holding tension. So then I'm just going to gently wait there, or you can very gently just do some little circles in that spot. And you don't have to spend a huge amount of time on this. I like to use them sort of daily as almost more of a check, rather than thinking you've got to spend a long time on each one. But like with Pepper, if I've just come in and through all the way here to about halfway up, if I can get my fingers really nicely and easily in that area, then I'll crack on, because I know that junction's really nice and open and she's not holding too much tension in that area. So that's a really nice one for the jaw. The second one is now focusing on the chest and the shoulder. And a lot of the time, what I was talking about before, if your horse has a lot of tension in the neck and the shoulder, what often happens is the elbow gets stuck a little bit into the chest. So again, that's going to block the lateral movement, so it's going to feel quite hard to get your horse to bend around your leg. They might feel a little bit choppy in their stride. So basically what you're going to do, this nice muscle here at the back of it, if you have a little feel around, you'll feel a knobbly area, that's their elbow. So line your hand up gently on their side. If you've got a horse that's a little bit girthy, you might just want to tie them up because they might be a little bit sensitive in this area. So just come down here first and make sure that they know that you're here. You're not just going to fly in there. But gently get your hand across the belly, and it's a very similar exercise to what we were doing with Peppers. So I've got the elbow there, my hands are sort of in line with that, and then I'm gently just sinking in to that area. And again, because she's just had her bodywork session, that's really easy for me to do. It's flowed in really nicely. Again, if your horse feels a little bit more restricted or it's a little bit tighter, just take your time. But ideally the goal is that we want to be able to get in so my knuckles are in line with her elbow.
Okay.
So we've got a really nice amount of space between the limb and between the rib cage, and there's no restriction for that elbow to be moving nice and freely. Once I'm in there, I'm just gently circling and massaging. If you feel anything that feels like noodly or grainy, that's fascial tightness. So again, just with fingertips really gently, just rolling around in there. There's nothing major that you have to do, but again, we're just reminding the nervous system that there's restriction there and to let it go. But you can kind of see from the start of the session to now, looking at her head position and her neck position,
It's so much more open, yeah.
Good girl. So that's the jaw, the shoulder. And then the last one is that deep core psoas area. So with this one, what we're going to do is locate the widest part of the pelvis, the wing of the pelvis. And on a horse like Peps or a cob, it's not as easy to find. On something like a thoroughbred or a warm blood, it's slightly more prominent. But basically, you're looking for that widest portion of the hip. Find it with the bone. Even if she's resting a leg, that's absolutely fine. That's the goal. So she's done it all for us. But basically, you're going to get the centre of your hand over that bony prominence, and then just let your hand fall into the soft area here. If your horse is restricted in this area, it might not feel that soft, but basically just let yourself fall off the bone so that the bone is still sort of within reach of your hand. You're then going to use this part of your hand gently sinking into that area. If you want to, you can put your other hand on top. I then just tend to put one leg behind and one leg in front, and I gently just apply a little bit of my own weight into that area. I'm not looking to push her over, that's not the weight that I'm adding. I'm looking to sink into this area. And again, it's not something that you have to spend ages on, but I like to kind of be here 30 seconds to a minute. If it's quite tight, maybe 90 seconds. But what you're looking to feel is that this whole area underneath your hand starts to soften up. Ideally, like Pepper did just then, is relaxed. They might kind of relax that. They might get a little bit fidgety because if this area has been restricted, once you're starting to get that blood flow and that circulation in, it can be a little bit itchy. So don't be surprised if they swing around and try and
do this.
Perfect comedic time. Add into that, once you've felt that release and you've got that nice springy feeling, just imagine that you've got sticky pads on your fingertips and just colouring in that whole area. You don't have to be specific about where you are, but adding in a little bit of friction work all around that widest part of the pelvis and over the front here, coming all the way up over the back, and if you want to, all the way over onto the other side. It's just really going to help mobilise that area, and with those 3 exercises together, we're hopefully freeing up each key area and making it a much easier ride for you and your horse.
Oh, thank you very much for sharing that. Sorry about the quality, guys. We've had to change to 2 different phones, but